Alright guys, back again. Let's talk about some movies. So I've got 5 movies that I'm going to talk about in this video, and I'm going to talk about 3 of them being horror movies and 2 of them are not horror movies. So let's get started with the first horror movie that I watched that I really wanted to talk about that came out this last year called Skinamarink, which is a Shudder release, and Skinamarink was one that I heard all my horror groups talk about. I heard about all the praise that it got from a lot of people, but then I heard a lot of people saying they didn't like it, and I was really interested then because I love movies that are like that, where you have a group of people who hate it and a group of people who love it. I love whenever a movie is split down the middle like that, because you don't have any idea how you're going to personally feel about it, and I really got excited to see this one. Now, Skinamarink, the plot of this, if there's even a plot at all, really is 2 boys are in a house alone and their parents have gone missing and creepy stuff happens. And that's all I'll say about the plot, because that's literally the only thing in the movie. That's the only plot. So this movie is very, very divisive now that I've watched it, because I didn't like it. I could tell why it's very divisive. This movie is more of a mood than a movie, if that makes sense. And I read afterwards that this is based on YouTube shorts, which that makes absolute sense that this is based on shorts from a YouTube channel, because I feel like they work way better as that. This movie is an hour and a half, and while it did give me moments of creepiness and anxiety, it it really was boring. It didn't do much for me besides a couple moments. And after the gimmick was like I understood what the gimmick was, it really lost me. It was really uninteresting. And as it went along, I was just dreading for it to end, and it was only like an hour and a half or an hour 40 minutes, something like that. And it drove me crazy because I just didn't it didn't have anything for me to cling on to, really. But I can't say it's the worst movie ever. It's definitely not. I just don't like it, from a standpoint of it's very uninteresting and too long for this kind of thing. I personally can't deal with a movie like this where it's just scenes of nothing happening forever. And I'm not saying that I'm ADD and I can't stand these movies, because I like stuff like Paranormal Activity or old slow burn horror, where like it's there's not much going on. But this one is not that the same as those for me. It just fell flat in that way. Um I will say this though, there is a moment that scared the shit out of me, and I honestly jumped and I was surprised. I was glad. But besides that moment, and besides a few instances of creepiness, it is a minute's worth of creepiness in an hour and a half or hour and 40 minute movie. That just didn't work for me. And I've talked to people who love this movie, and I've talked to people who hate it, so I can see every reason why. But it just didn't work for me personally. It's not a terrible movie. It's just a movie that I will not watch again. Didn't like it. But like I said, there's a couple elements in it that work, but it's just not something that I personally would ever watch again. But I'm glad it exists. I'm glad people like it, and I'm glad people hate it. I like these divisive movies. Um, so the next one I will talk about is No One Will Save You, which is a Hulu slash Disney Plus exclusive that 20th Century Studios did, similar to Prey, where it is direct to Hulu slash Disney Plus. It is about a woman who is encountering an alien takeover, and she is running out of resources and finding nowhere to run. And I'll say this: I actually really thought this was good. I wish that this was in theaters. Um, this one was really entertaining and really interesting, and actually pretty creepy. It worked with a lot of aspects for me. Um, I thought the performance of the main girl was really good, because this movie is almost no dialogue really until like the end. I guess it's kind of spoilers. There's not really much dialogue at all, and I really liked that. I liked that gimmick. It worked pretty well in this. Not as well as say A Quiet Place, I guess, with like not saying anything, because that worked a little better with the idea of not being able to say anything, and that's the reason why. This one is just a there's not really a reason why there's not much speech. She just doesn't say much. But I guess she's by herself, so I guess that makes sense. But it's still, I felt like it was better in A Quiet Place with that element. But I think the element in this worked with that as well. Just not as great. Like I said, the main character is really good. I like the idea of it being a quiet movie. I like that it just feels like a non-stop, like after the beginning, it's a non-stop just thriller, and I really enjoyed that. I feel like people are gonna look at the ending and say that it might be, and I'm not gonna say what the ending is, but I think people are gonna look at the ending and go, "Wow, this is what lost me," and I can see completely why. But I dug it. I won't say anything again about the ending, but I think it worked for me personally. Um, it does a lot with so little, which I really like. That's what I do appreciate about this one. It did a good job with these elements, and it made them all work pretty well. So I did really like this one a lot. I'm glad I finally saw it. It's been out for a couple months, but No One Will Save You was a really good one. And then the third horror movie I'm going to talk about is Night Swim, which is the newest Blumhouse Universal movie that came out to theaters, which I went and saw. Starring Wyatt Russell, and I don't know what the actress's name is, who's the other main character, but she's great in it. This movie, she's great in it, the main actress, and Wyatt Russell's good. But this movie, I think, benefits from the build up as opposed to the ending for me for Night Swim. If you don't know what the plot is in Night Swim by the trailers, it is a killer pool. Like, these people go into this pool and like some creepy stuff happens, and it's sat there forever, and this new family moves in, and then weird stuff starts happening with Wyatt Russell, the dad, and the pool, and how it's kind of like possessing him kind of thing, while the wife is trying to figure out what to do, and the kids are slowly learning that it's a bad thing as well. I'll say this, like I said, the build up is effective and okay in this movie, but the ending kind of just lost me. I didn't really feel like I was invested after it got to the reveal of what's going on in Night Swim. I think it kind of just fell flat. Not to say that it was bad, it's just another one of those movies that I've seen it before besides the idea of a killer pool. Like, I don't think I've seen a killer pool movie, and I know there's one out there. But this one didn't do much for me. Unfortunately, it's one of those mostly slow burns with a couple moments of creepiness throughout, and they were okay as it went along, but as the last act started, it kind of felt different than what it was already, which is understandable because you get the reveal, but it just didn't fully work in that way for me, if that makes sense. Like, I liked it okay, but it was not anything that I'll really watch again or really remember, besides the idea of a killer pool. Which, like I said, I know there's probably a killer pool movie that I've not seen, but this one it was fine. Like, it was okay, but I rated it really low. Like on Letterboxd, I rated it like 2 out of 5 stars because I'll never watch it again. It had moments of interesting things in it, but it was not anything that I'm going to remember at all. So that's why it's rated so low on my Letterboxd. Like Skinamarink did the same thing. That was 2 stars, and then No One Will Save You was like 4.5 out of 5 stars because I really like No One Will Save You. But Night Swim, yes, Night Swim was whatever. It wasn't anything really bad at all. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good or great. It was okay. And then the other 2 movies that I watched that are non-horror is Aquaman 2, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, I think is the subtitle. I watched this the week that it came out of Christmas, week before Christmas. So it's been a couple weeks. Aquaman 2 is the final movie in the DCEU, in which James Gunn has taken over and is replacing the continuity and the universe to reboot it. Which I personally am fine with for the most part, because I've never been a giant fan of the DCEU except for a couple of movies. Like, I really thought the Suicide Squads, both of them, are fun. Like, the first Suicide Squad is dumb and trashy, but I enjoy it. And then the James Gunn Suicide Squad, I think, is great. Excellent. And Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn is really good too. That one I've gone back to a lot rewatching. I really do like that one a lot. Mostly the Harley Quinn centered ones I enjoy for the DCEU. Everything else is whatever. Like, I do like the first Wonder Woman a lot. I think that's a great movie. Shazam, I liked a lot the first one. The second one's okay. Um, and Aquaman 1 I liked a lot too. So there's definitely movies in this that I enjoy in the DCEU, but I guess I'm glad that they are rebooting it because it does feel like it's needed. But the only thing that sucks is that the studio said this and they still had 3 movies to release: Black Adam, The Flash, and this one. So these movies were by definition going to fail, whether you like them or not, because they already announced that the universe is being rebooted. So it's very strange. Very strange way of making your movies. But I kind of get it because it's a big corporate company. I guess they've got all these rules and regulations. I don't know how they do it. I've never worked in a big company like that, so who am I to say? But Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is again the sequel to the 2018 Aquaman, and one I really liked, the first Aquaman. This one is where Arthur and his brother Orm go and fight Black Manta, because Black Manta was the villain of the first Aquaman. And this is a buddy, like a kind of like a buddy team up movie, and I like that. I thought that this movie does a good job with the buddy team up stuff, with how Patrick Wilson as Orm, I think, being a bad guy in the first one, does a good job in this one, just being kind of like a foil for Arthur. And I thought that they both of them together work pretty well. I liked that a lot, and it kind of worked in its favor for being a sequel. Like, I thought that was interesting. Besides that, this movie is a gobbledygook of CG madness. Like, it is another one of those DC movies or Marvel movies where it's just a lot of CG stuff in your face, and that is becoming the least favorite of mine in those elements of these things now, that they're becoming kind of like a gobbledygook of like CG and like fantasy stuff that looks all similar and all the same. And we have over 30 Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, and then we have like 10 of these DC movies. So it's like it's kind of wearing its welcome, all these superhero movies, and I can get that because this movie has done okay, but the Marvels bombed hardcore, and the Flash bombed hardcore, so both of these franchises have bombed recently. Apparently Aquaman 2 is doing better than the Flash, which is good, but it's still not doing great. And like I said, it's hard with these movies because they have so many issues. Also, this movie is another one where I don't want to get into the personal aspects of these actors, and I'm not going to say how I feel either way about it, really. But Amber Heard's in this movie, and she has a good amount of screen time. And I was honestly kind of glad that they didn't kick her out because of a personal issue in real life with her and Johnny Depp and how toxic their relationship was. Like, that didn't need to matter to me. Like, I wanted to see the movie for these characters, and that character Mara is in the movie like she was in the first one, which I appreciate. I don't want to keep real life issues and in a movie being like, unless it's like a drastic thing, like unless like an actor killed or raped somebody, I get why they're not going to be in a movie like this. But whenever they're just not in a movie because of domestic dispute, it doesn't really feel as legitimate to me to kick them out of the movie. And I like that they kept Amber Heard in this, whether you like her or not as a person, or whether you like Johnny Depp or not as a person. Like, I like that they kept Amber Heard in this. And at first it felt like they were cutting her stuff a lot, but as the movie went along, she was in it way more than I expected, which I really appreciated and was glad for, because like I said, I don't like personal life stuff that's not that big of a deal to movies. Like, eventually we're going to have a point where all of these actors are going to have something that that they do wrong or the public's going to perceive wrong with them, and then we're not going to have movies anymore because there's so many actors who are just going to be gone because people don't realize that everybody does something horrible, and that's kind of a sad truth. Like, you're not going to have innocent people in these things. um it's weird, and I'm not saying I agree with like when people are bad people, but I'm just saying like eventually it's just not going to be like eventually we're not going to have movies of everybody. We find out everything about everybody. That's just not how the world is going to work, because everybody's flawed. Every human being is flawed in some way, shape, or form. um but yeah, it was interesting to see her in this. I thought that was the most interesting aspect of this movie, to be honest. That I was looking at, man, I think they cut her lines in this a little, but then she's in the end a lot. Like, I liked seeing that, and I was more interested in that than the movie itself, which is fine. The movie's solid, but it's not anything that's great. But like, not as great as the first one either. The first one had more genuine goofiness, if that makes sense. This one is goofy too, but it doesn't feel as genuine. And it's directed by James Wan as well, like the first one. But this one feels more studio mandate like as opposed to its own thing. Like the first one felt like it was trying to be its own thing. And I'm not saying isn't its own thing as in it's not connected to the DCU. Like, there's no references to the DCU in this movie, which is actually really surprising. And I know that they had a lot of back and forths between this and The Flash, where they were going to have all these cameos, and they deleted them and cut them. There was a Ben Affleck cameo in The Flash. Ben Affleck cameo in this. Then there was a Michael Keaton cameo in this, apparently. Both gone. This movie has no outer connection to the DCEU, which I think is good, because it's very confusing already for an audience what's going on. It's like Blue Beetle, which I like Blue Beetle a lot. It was similar to Blue Beetle, where it was really just on its own in this universe without really any explicit references to the universe. Really, I don't think, besides the connection to the first Aquaman. So I like that. So the flaws of Aquaman is that it's CGI gobbledygook, but it's got some fun moments. It's got some genuinely fun moments, but it's not as good as the first one. The characters are still fine, but it's just not anything that I'm gonna really remember as well as the first one. But I think it's good. Like I said, the Amber Heard thing was the most interesting thing throughout the movie. I was questioning, just because we heard about it so much. But like, the actual plot itself was just, I already forgot the plot pretty much. It was exactly what you expect it to be. But that's not always a bad thing. You can still like a movie even if it's going to be generic. It just depends on how they perceive the genericness of it and how you interpret it. Because sometimes I'll interpret really generic ass stuff, and I like a lot of stuff like that. But the superhero genre right now is just so overinflated that I'm just kind of becoming desensitized to a lot of it now, where it's most of these superhero movies are fine, but like, they're not anything super memorable now, which is unfortunate. So yeah, Aquaman 2 is solid. Not great, not as good as the first one, but it was solid. I enjoyed things about it for sure. Then the last movie I'm going to talk about is Poor Things, which is the movie directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, and I had to write that name down because I could not pronounce the last name. Yorgos Lanthimos, starring Emma Stone, Mark Ruffalo, and Willem Dafoe. And this director, I have seen one of his movies before. I watched The Lobster, which is a really dry movie, and I feel like I should watch that again because I was not in the same kind of state I am now with how I perceive movies. Like, that movie was very dry, but maybe I might like it more now after I've watched more movies like it. But that's the only movie I could say I've seen of this director's filmography, which is unfortunate because I didn't like that one whenever I watched it a long time ago. But I loved this movie. Poor Things, I thought, was excellent. So I'm not going to say everything about this movie, but this movie is a movie to see if you're into hilarious, indie, outrageous, like, balls to the wall, like those kind of movies I love. And the plot of this, and I'm going to say only the plot that's revealed in like the first like 5-10 minutes, So Willem Dafoe is a Frankenstein type creator. Um, he he does things like he has animals where it's like a duck head, and then like the duck has a body of a dog, and like it still is alive and talks and quacks, kind of thing. Where he creates monsters like Frankenstein's creator, um, or I mean like Frankenstein. Um, but Willem Dafoe finds the body of Emma Stone's character, um, who commits suicide by jumping off of a bridge and has a baby that died with her. So he takes the brain of the baby and puts it in Emma Stone's brain and reanimates her. And she grows in an adult body as a baby mind, and then slowly becomes more adult. And throughout the movie she grows, but immediately she becomes horny as fuck and starts screwing everything that she can, and it's genuinely funny and it's hilarious. I love the fact that this movie doesn't like shy away from the fact that this movie is so over the top vulgar and just gross, and I like that. I thought that it was genuinely funny, and the fact that Emma Stone, the things that she does in this movie is really commendable, because I feel like actors and actresses who do sex stuff like this or pretend to do sex stuff like this on camera, um, they've got to have a movie that will actually mean something. And I feel like this meant something in terms of like it's not gratuitous in the way you, not gratuitous in the way that you want it to be, or that people want it to be. It's gratuitous in the way where it's hilarious and it's just outrageous. And I thought that genuinely makes it fun because it's just so ridiculous. Um, yeah, I love this one. I can't say much else about it. Oh, well, I guess I'll say Mark Ruffalo's in this, and he's a prick. Like, I loved his character, too. He was such an asshole. Um, and I don't see him as an asshole much in shows or movies. He's genuinely hilarious in this, too. Like, all three of these actors are fantastic. And all the lines land, all the humor lands. It is visually a treat watching this because you've got the opening scenes are in black and white in London, where it's like one of those old Universal monster movies whenever she's just being alive again and reanimated. Um, but then as they leave, it becomes more colorful and vibrant and bright, and there's cinematic elements to it that are really cool, like camera angles where it looks like you're in a fisheye or a glass. It looks like you're in a glass ball or something in moments, or just grand sweeping moments that look like it's something out of an old Hollywood movie kind of thing. And I really liked those elements as well. This movie did a really great job with just being very fun and very unique and hilarious. And it's just one of those movies that if you're a prude, or if you're into this stuff, like you'll love it. I think in terms of these type of crazy movies. Like, but if you're a prude, I don't think you'll like it that much. Um, but I love this one. It was hilarious, really really fun. Yeah, Poor Things was excellent. So that is all the movies that I watched recently that are new releases. I'm trying to get back on watching more of them, but if you stayed till the end, thank you for watching. I've got some more stuff coming up in terms of new movie releases. I'm trying to think if there's any on streaming or theaters I'm going to watch. I think I'll watch that Beekeeper movie soon with Jason Statham, I think. Um, and there's a couple others that'll probably come out in theaters soon that I'll see, but I can't think of it on top of my head. But there's definitely some streaming ones that are brand new that I'll probably watch, horror related. But yeah, mostly it's just horror. But then, like I said, I got a couple non-horrors that I want to watch as well and review. But anyways, I'm talking too much again like usual. So thank you guys for watching and take care.